All right. I'm going to go ahead and introduce John here, and then we'll get going.
Hey guys, Yarrels. My name is John. I am a senior blue team kind of guy. I do incident response. I work with our SOC. I'm also really on the ChatGPT scene, and overall, I like red teaming for like the hacker first mindset. How about you, Ed?
Hi, guys. I'm a professional karaokeer, and I do cybersecurity for money.
So we have a few objectives we'd like to cover today. Obfuscation in general, real world threats like applications of this, um, some tooling like invoke obfuscation, how you can detect these things, um, alert fatigue and how that can be a leveraged thing in your attack, and then creating those malicious, non malicious looking scripts, and why they can be difficult to detect, and then actually deploying them and how you can manifest them into an environment.
Cool.
Ed? Oh, and obfuscation is from ChatGPT here, um, a practice of intentionally hiding the true purpose of something, right? So we're deliberately trying to circumvent stacked controls or mechanisms in place. And one of the big recent threats that we've seen is bootloader. And so bootloader is a prime example of obfuscation in plain sight. Um, bootloader will infect business related documents, they'll poison them online, then they'll leverage search engine optimization poisoning to get people to download these infected JavaScript PDFs. And what it comes down to is a PDF that brings down a JavaScript file and it's hidden inside of a legitimate library, right? So on the left here, you have a JavaScript library injected with this weird looking malicious code, this green stuff. And on the right, that's the original library pulled from backbone.js, right? So if you do a diff, you can see clearly this is literally injected into a default package. So next slide. And so if you pull out the payload, you can do a differential analysis on this and basically detonate the JavaScript library. And Mandiant actually published a way to pull this out of these payloads in their bootloader bootcamp, which I really recommend you to check it out. This isn't deobfuscated. This is just the raw output from one of those runs. Um, Next slide, please. And so that was the first stage. The first stage actually reaches out, and then what we observed is that it was hitting iframes and pulling down these PowerShell cradles for further C2. And so you download this PDF, it executes the JavaScript hidden inside of this legit looking library, pulls down a PowerShell from the internet, right? We're doing more C2. It looks again more obfuscated, but again, this is a second stage, and then the third stage was what we observed: Cobalt strike beacons being deployed. So this is like as real as it gets to being on the front. I'll let Ed take it over here.
All right. So, one way to actually automatically obfuscate things, because manually typing in random characters as your variables and then matching them up kind of sucks. So there's actually scripted ways to do this, and to actually make things kind of work, right? And specifically for PowerShell, there's invoke obfuscation, right? And this is kind of what it looks like. It's kind of hard to see on the screen here, but you can have different iterations and different versions of obfuscation here. At the top, you have some sort of encoding obfuscation that just looks like a bunch of random mess here. Sometimes you can create a bunch of appendations and random characters as well, and you can even mix it up in there, right? So just as a little example here, we can see this PowerShell cradle invoke expression to an invoke web request to our C2 server get obfuscated to the bottom part right here, right? Um, However, us as defenders and attackers at once, we can also build the defenses in Splunk to accommodate for the patterns that are within invoke obfuscation, right? So I'm looking in Splunk, I'm looking for PS Home and Shell ID. And honestly, I could go further with this, but this is just for the presentation. I'm being a little lazy with this kind of search, but you guys get the point on this. So we're going to actually switch over to the attacker mindset. And because we know that this entire random nonsense of stuff is gonna catch somebody's eye, right? And it's gonna flag, and people are gonna reverse engineer it and then see what our intentions are, right? And we want to essentially maintain our stealth. And I'm gonna pass it back over to John here.
Yep. Thanks, Ed. And so, like he's saying, that's exactly right. One of the things we do is we make content, right? So for our Splunk, we have to feed it alerts. And eventually you do get a lot of false positives. And it does come from things that you do inside your environment, your security, your scripting, all of these little trafficking events. So what you can do is go to like a public GitHub, just like a developer, pull down a library or a PowerShell script that is out of the box designed to look like a legit thing. And then again, you just inject it with malicious code to do what you want, and in such a way that it doesn't look inflammatory. Just like when you're messing with ChatGPT and you can't ask it how to hack, you have to ask it how to do specific things in a non-inflammatory way. So we're going to present this idea of pulling down or using in an environment a legit looking script and including all those hallmarks, the license, author, try to get it signed if it is. If you can get a malicious code signed, you're god tier. Next slide.
All right.
And difficulty of detection, this is again hard stuff to detect, and I run through like CrowdStrike daily with a lot of some of these things, and even after a while you have to understand that like there's just so much traffic in some environments that that background scripting is extremely noisy and can be weaponized. And then it comes down to like, how effective is your script? And if it's effective enough, you can get right past EDR. It's definitely possible. It happens all the time. That's why we have to hunt for these threats. And if you have exclusions, this can really open up bigger holes. That's why we try not to exclude by file path, right? Paths are terrible. You should do it by hash. And then the other thing is we're really targeting the analyst here. We're trying to get around the human element of these attacks, right? Because eventually someone has to look at this if it doesn't get blocked. And if you get to that, you want to just get past those eyes. So we're ultimately trying to help that analyst understand what they need to be aware of and how they can monitor for these things in their environment. Because this is just a generalization of this field, right? There are many different execution combinations and variations and obfuscations you could do to ultimately hide your intent. And that's what we're trying to describe here.
All right. So to actually kind of accomplish this in this version of this, right, there's many ways to accomplish this. In this example here, what you see is a pen key, right? Something to SSH to something. However, it's really not what it is. This is actually a function designed to disguise a payload as a pen key, right? So I use these string delimiters to hide some XOR encrypted payload that is going to be decrypted and then executed, right? That's the entire point of this part right here, right? So and what that's going to kind of go to is something. It's going to be. I called the file a AWS health check script, right? So and it has 3 different functions. So the first function is going to be the parser function, and then the next function is going to be the decryptor function, and the next function is going to be the execution function, right? So just going over to the parser function. All it's doing is it's looking for the pattern right here. And I could probably do a little bit better with this to kind of hide this because this kind of looks sus by itself. But this is really just an example here. But as you can see, just regular written code. So this would actually be on the client side, right? The actual client side of the malware, right? Um, so obviously, I don't want to say fake pen string in the actual on the actual script for the victim, because if they see that, they will flag that, right? So instead, I want to kind of call it pen string here. So sorry to disappoint you. This is just how I do things. And now my function's also now called AWS pen parser here, right? So let's put them side by side here. I know no random characters or anything. I'm just calling out these functions here. So I'm just renaming functions and variables. So that's our parser function. And again, we're going to go to our decryptor function here, right? So all this is an XOR decryption function here. And then it just it decodes for base 64 and then just returns that value, right? And then here it is, as I am obfuscating in plain sight here. Just renaming the function, renaming the variables to make things look like AWS stuff, right? And then putting them next to each other here, right? So as you can see, just small changes, right? Nothing crazy fancy. And you'll be surprised on what this gets past.
He's not lying either.
So here's a fun thing here, right? This is the execution side, right? And I know it says execute decrypted. This is how I wrote it, and then I'm just again renaming functions, renaming variables here, right? And let's see here. And then now I'm just, here we go again, renaming functions and renaming variables, right? And the best part about this is, does anybody see the hard-coded credential here, right? The hard-coded credential is what's actually decoding the XOR, so it can actually decode the payload and execute it, right? So it's actually sitting right here as the AWS region, which is the US East, which is something that you would put into AWS CLI sometimes if you ever have to do any kind of configuration with it. So that also seems legit. So putting them next to each other, that's what it looks like. Almost looks the same. Top one is suspicious. Bottom one's not, right? And then where all the money goes, invoke expression, where it's saying it's executing what it's AWS CLI in it, right? So that looks like whatever developer would use to automate something, right? So I'm basically just pretending to be a developer here to hide, right? So let's kind of put it all together, right? So I got a little video here, and we'll kind of see what this looks like. So we talked about a PS app deploy script earlier, and to be honest with you, I didn't write out the entire thing myself. There's this tool called ChatGPT, and I copy and pasted PS app deploy kit and said rewrite this to match my script. So here it goes. So that's what it looks like here, right? And then also at the end of the presentation, you can see that script as well. Just take a picture of the QR code, it goes to GitHub, and it'll send a link right here. So that's what it all looks like all together here, right? So I'm just kind of highlighting a few parts of it. And what I'm doing right now, I'm just commenting out the invoke expression part, just so I don't have to execute the actual payload, and you can actually just see what's on the other side here. So this is looks like it's setting up a scheduled task that's going to set up, that's going to execute PowerShell that goes to my C2 server and download a script here. So that's all that is, right?
And what he's using here is VS Code in dark mode. If anyone's not familiar, this is a really great platform to play with code. You can use it as a notepad. You can use it as an interactive development environment, and you can even execute your shell scripts and such. So if you're not familiar, check it out.
Yep. Yeah, he taught me all about that. I was using Notepad++ for a long time.
I still use it. But VS Code allows you to take what you've got in the and then execute it, which is awesome. So you can do both.
Yep. This is kind of this will be I think it's what the this is kind of how I deliver payload, right? Could do phishing, right? So send a file, right? Or just straight up execute it somewhere. So it could either be phishing, or if you have some sort of control, right? But you're just gonna be downloading from the C2 server and then executing, right? And I just kind of want to show you, this is kind of all a test anyways. So just kind of showing what happens when it gets executed on the other side here. And then
we're detonating this inside of a Flare VM. That's another really good tool if anyone's not familiar with that one. Flare VM.
And there's just like many different ways to kind of get these on a computer, right? Send a phishing email with a malicious JS file, kind of similar to bootloader, right? But this is kind of more of a post-exploitation sort of thing and more persistence. So, but just an example of kind of how it goes here. So right now what I'm doing is just going to go ahead and run this script here. I know we just saw it all again. Let's see here. All right, running the script. Obviously, want to run it here, and then now we're going to switch over to the attacker side and kind of show what that looks like here. So this is just a C2 built out of Flask. Also, if you want an example of a simple C2, that's also on the GitHub as well. Just a web server that that stores the commands and then lets you receive standard outputs from the remote access Trojan, right? So and that's also written simply in PowerShell as well.
So if anyone's not tracking, if anyone's not tracking, he detonated the payload and it's now actively communicating back and forth between, and that's his custom built C2 that's doing the periodic GET requests. Sorry, Ed, go right ahead.
I actually let you talk about this one since this one's kind of Splunk. It's on your side anyway.
Yeah, no doubt. So that again, Flare VM, we have that built into our Splunk environment at home that we kind of set up off out of work. And this is the actual detection from the Aurora EDR showing, more or less the activity. Let's just put it that way, because EDR hits on activity. And so it's basically saying, hey, this AWS health check is definitely doing some sus stuff. You need to check it out. And we can field things out like script block text, rule description. And rule description is telling you what it is. Script block text is telling you the contents of the script. And this is from the logging perspective, how you would have what you would see, right? This is what I'm seeing when you're blowing stuff up and I have to track you down. So it would be on me, the analyst, engineer, whoever, to go through this script and be like, okay, is the EDR doing a false positive on a legit health check, or is this some ATP trying to get past, right? APT, my pardon. So this is a really good example of what you're going to be seeing if you're possibly dealing with a threat. They are going to definitely try to get past you hiding in the traffic. Let's just put it that way.
Yep. And this is just a test environment here. As you can see, there's only one event. But if you're in a big enterprise environment, you're going to see a ton of stuff that looks like this. And they would probably all detect off of set execution policy, right? Because that happens a lot. And most people just tune it out. And that's kind of why this is an interesting way to get past defenses here.
And this goes back like to what he's saying with exclusion paths. If you exclude a whole path from a defense, that means that that could be free reign to just do what you want, right? And that's not good at all.
Right.
I think that was all we had on this one. I think it just was there anything more on this video?
Oh, I think we just go over the different signatures, and we can actually see some of them here. So, so some of them are just normal stuff in here. Actually, I know some of the remote SMB logons actually comes with the already gets detected by already EDR. We got suspicious PowerShell keywords on here, and usage of web requests and commandlets, right? But that'll always lead back to whenever you go investigate. This it's just going to show that script that flags anyways, and so and that little character is just blocking out my actual C2 server here. So so yeah, don't worry about that too much. But so I know we're gonna. This is what we saw earlier here. This is what it triggered out of the private key. So, and if you were to throw that private key into CyberChef, it would still give you a bunch of nonsense because it's XOR encrypted, right? So it's not going to help you too much. It would still look like a private key when try to do some other stuff, right?
Try ChatGPT.
Yeah. So, speaking of ChatGPT, right? If you were to be lazy with your job, and I know a lot of people are restricted from using ChatGPT at their network, and they try to use ChatGPT for reverse engineering malware, which for a CTF, we have done so and done pretty good with doing that. However, it doesn't work all the time. We're going to copy and paste our payload, our malicious script, and put it into ChatGPT here. And I'll probably add another one of these to the list here of weird stuff there. Okay, press play here, copy and paste. Hear how loud my keyboard is. Probably should have muted that, but it's okay.
Mechanical typewriter for
yeah. So the script appears to be safe to run as it does not contain any obvious malicious code. Right? Invoke expression is something that gets used a lot in PowerShell anyways, so I'm kind of blending in. And the other thing is, if you're detecting off of both invoke expression and invoke web request, and making your alerts off of that, the thing is that invoke web request is actually in the scheduled tasks that's actually XOR encrypted in the PEM key, so that won't get detected here. So this script by itself won't get detected, but so you'll have to rely on the attacker making a mistake on other sides.
The only way you might catch something like this is if you have like CrowdStrike with machine learning turned on, and it might catch it at runtime when it goes into memory. But that might be your only chance, other than a manual analysis.
Yep. It'll probably detect it off of the scheduled task.
Yeah, right? Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. But that was kind of an example. So there's probably other ways that you want to persist that way, and then also hide that stuff. So yeah. Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns, death threats, challenges to death? All right. Well, here is my PowerPoint. If you guys want to see it, and GitHub repo, a lot of fun stuff on there. I learned some funny lessons from before. So some of it won't work if you want to use it in your red team engagements because I uploaded one of them to VirusTotal like an idiot. So it would actually never. It would never bypass anything. Not this one specifically, but something else. It's in there somewhere, but you'll find out.
You can hit me up on LinkedIn if you want to get some questions in. Ed, I think the same for you, right? They got questions.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Yep. Maybe find me in the ether. But yeah, that's all I got.